Have you ever heard of the First Balkan War? For many, it's just a footnote in a history textbook, a confusing conflict tucked away before the main event, World War I. But what if I told you this war was far more than just a regional squabble? What if it was the first domino to fall in a chain reaction that would redraw the map of Europe, shatter a 600-year-old empire, and set the stage for one of the greatest tragedies of the 20th century? By the early 1900s, the Ottoman Empire, once the terror of Europe, was now famously known as the sick man of Europe. Its vast territories were crumbling, and its internal structure was groaning under the weight of centuries of mismanagement and ethnic tensions. The major European powers, Russian, German, Austro-Hungarian, and British empires, were like vultures circling a weakened animal, each looking for a piece of the pie. They saw the Balkans, the empire's European foothold, as prime real estate. The Ottomans were already in a tight spot. They were tangled in a costly war with Italy over Libya, which left their western flank exposed and vulnerable. This was the opening the great powers, particularly Russian Empire, had been waiting for. Russia, styling itself as the protector of all Slavic peoples, began to champion a powerful idea, Pan-Slavism. The goal was to unite the Slavic nations of the Balkans under Russian influence and, in the process, push the Ottomans out of Europe for good. This led to one of history's most unlikely alliances. The Greeks, Bulgarians, Serbians, and Montenegrins, nations that had been at each other's throats for centuries over land, religion, and history, suddenly found a common enemy. Under the banner of the Balkan League, fueled by nationalist fervor and covertly supported by Russia, they agreed to put aside their differences, their shared mission to liberate Macedonia, a region of immense historical and symbolic importance, from Ottoman rule. In October 1912, the Balkan League declared war. The Ottoman army, overstretched, poorly equipped, and demoralized from the war in Libya, was no match for the combined, motivated forces of the alliance. The Balkan armies swept through Ottoman territories with shocking speed. Battles were fought and won in rapid succession. The once mighty Ottoman forces were routed, suffering one catastrophic defeat after another. They were pushed all the way back to the very outskirts of their capital, Constantinople. Within a matter of weeks, the Ottoman Empire had lost almost all of its European possessions, territories it had controlled for over 500 years. It was a stunning and decisive victory for the Balkan League. But this newfound unity was as fragile as it was surprising. The ink on the peace treaty was barely dry before the victors started arguing over the spoils. The main prize, Macedonia, became a bone of contention. The question of who got what part of this ethnically diverse region quickly soured relations. The alliance shattered, and just a few months later, the Second Balkan War erupted. This time, the former allies turned their guns on each other in a bloody scramble for territory. This infighting showed just how volatile the region was, earning it the nickname the powder keg of Europe. And, as we know, a spark in this powder keg would soon ignite the entire continent. The First Balkan War was more than a prelude to World War I. It was the beginning of the end for the Ottoman Empire. The humiliating defeat sent shockwaves through the heart of the empire in Constantinople. The loss of their European lands was not just a military or political disaster. It was a deep psychological blow for the ruling Committee of Union and Progress, also known as the Young Turks. This defeat was proof that the empire's multi-ethnic, multi-religious model had failed. They believed that the Christian minorities had been a fifth column sympathizing with the enemy. A new, more aggressive, and exclusionary ideology began to take hold. Turkish nationalism. The dream of a diverse Ottoman identity was replaced with the vision of a homogeneous Turkish state. This ideological shift would have devastating consequences, particularly for the non-Muslim populations who had lived within the empire for centuries. The war also created a massive refugee crisis. Hundreds of thousands of Muslims, displaced from the lost Balkan territories, poured into the remaining Ottoman lands. Primarily Anatolia. The government was faced with the immense challenge of resettling these destitute and often vengeful populations. They needed land, and they needed it fast, and they looked towards the empire's own minorities to provide it. The Armenians became a primary target. As a prosperous Christian minority living in the eastern provinces of Anatolia for millennia, they were seen as an easy scapegoat. They were often wealthier than their neighbors, involved in trade and commerce, which bred resentment. Under the Ottoman legal system, as Christians, they were considered second-class citizens or dhimmi, with fewer rights and protections. This made them vulnerable. The government saw a convenient and brutal solution to their problems. The displaced Muslims needed land, and the Armenians had it. The rising tide of Turkish nationalism viewed the Armenians as an alien element, an obstacle to creating a pure Turkish nation. The economic success of the Armenians was reframed as parasitic exploitation, and their calls for equal rights and reforms were twisted into acts of rebellion. The catastrophic defeat in the Balkans hardened these views into a deadly policy. The stage was now set. The loss of empire, the refugee crisis, the rise of an aggressive nationalist ideology, and the long-standing vulnerability of the Armenian population created a perfect storm. The First Balkan War didn't just break the Ottoman Empire on the battlefield, it broke something inside it. It unleashed dark forces and extremist ideas that would soon culminate in the systematic persecution and eventual genocide of the Armenian people during the chaos of World War I. And so, this seemingly small war in a corner of Europe had consequences that rippled across the world too. This date, demonstrating how military defeat and nationalist rage can create the conditions for unimaginable human tragedy. It's a sobering reminder of how quickly the world can change, and how the seeds of future conflicts are often sown in the forgotten wars of the past. Thanks for watching. As always, this is your host Donica Dequella signing off. If you found this dive into a lesser-known part of history interesting, be sure to like this video and subscribe to Silk and Steel for more deep dives into the events that shaped our world. See you in the next one.